And welcome back. Before we move on with too many new topics here, I want to take a moment to really discuss symbols, because we've done a little bit of work with them, but we haven't really talked about what they are or some of their differences. So for today's lesson, it's going to be more informative rather than us making something. So I want to first talk about the difference between, for example, a graphic and a movie clip. So here I've imported a image. This is that rabbit that we've used previously. And if I right click on it, I do have the option to convert to symbol. Now when I do that, of course, we get the option to name that symbol. And it's always best practice to try and name this something that is relevant to what it is. So if I need to go back through my list of symbols, I can remember what it is. So I'm just going to call this rabbit. And under our type, you will see that we have, by default here, graphic. Yours might say movie clip, or it could say button. Now each of these, of course, has a different property to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just do a graphic here for this first one, and let's just go ahead and choose OK. And now you'll see that this is a symbol. Here's our center anchoring point. And I'm actually just going to move this rabbit over here. And let's just make another layer here. And I'm just going to re-import that same rabbit here, or I could even duplicate that to another layer. I'm just going to go ahead and re-import another image. Let's go ahead and grab, for example, the knight that we had previously worked with. I'm going to set her over here. And this, of course, you notice it went to layer 1, which is not a problem. I can simply just right-click. I can cut, click on layer 3, right-click, paste in place, and you can see now that is on layer 3. And, of course, this is still rendering as an object, so I want to maybe make this a symbol so I can convert to symbol. And this time, I'm going to choose movie clip, call it knight, just so that I can differentiate. And now we can look at these two properties here. So I want you to focus your eyes over here on the properties panel. If you notice that when we click on the rabbit, you'll see the type changes to graphic. And we have a lot less options versus when we look at the movie clip here. We do see some similarities between these. For example, we can see we have control over things such as position and size. We have color effects that we can do, such as brightness, tint, the alpha. All those will carry across both the movie clip and the graphic. One of the big differences, though, you'll know, of course, is that the movie clip has these things such as filters, accessibility, 3D view, all this stuff. But let's just go ahead and look at these filters. For example, I want to add a filter here. Some of these cool things I can come in and start doing is I can do things, for example, like add a drop shadow. And you can see that adds a kind of a shadow outline behind this character. I can, of course, also change the angle of that drop shadow. I could increase the blur radius here to really affect how I want that to be. You can even change the color. So, for example, maybe I want, because this is a knight, maybe I want them to represent more like a holy knight, make them like a paladin. Might do a golden glow around them, and of course I can do that. And you have options for other things as inner shadow, etc. But just want to show you that this is just a filter that we can do. We, of course, can add other filters. So, for example, if I want to add a glow effect instead of a drop shadow, I could do a glow effect. So maybe I want to make this one more of that yellow and change this drop shadow back to more of a gray tone there. And you can see how we can really start layering these different effects here on movie clips. And if we were to animate this as a moving piece here, these effects could carry through with our different animations. We might have to change the different pieces here for different keyframes, but that's okay. But when we look at our graphic here, you'll notice that we don't have those same options. However, we do get something that we do not see in our movie clip, and that is the option of looping. Now, there is a way to do movie clips with looping, but typically with animation, when we are going to do any kind of looping effect, we're going to choose to make it a graphic, simply because we have more of a fine control. So by default, you can see it goes to play graphic in a loop, but we have other things such as playing the graphic once, playing a single frame, playing in reverse once, or playing in a reverse loop. So we, of course, then can dive into looking at these different pieces. Now, I'm not going to go too much into all these different effects and stuff today, because again, I just want you to see these differences of how these different pieces are applied here. And again, we can still do all the same things that we've done before with our animations, but I wanted you to be aware that these two different graphic types exist here between movie clip and a graphic. And for our purposes, most of the time we are probably going to, when we create a symbol, create a graphic. Now, one thing I do want to show real quick here, just as a closing bit, is if I were to create a primitive shape, let's just make one more layer. Let's just make a primitive shape, so I'll just make a basic rectangle in here. And I want to convert this into a shape, so right click, convert to symbol. You can see where it might default to, because Movieclip was the last thing we did. If I choose graphic, I can then do a rectangle here. And it will now also possess whatever properties were that I possessed to. Now, if I want to change this, let's say, oh, I don't really want this to be a graphic. I want this to be a movie clip. Just simply all I need to do is go to that drop down, click that from graphic to movie clip, and even if I were to come back and click on something else, you'll see it retains that movie clip property. So it's pretty easy to come in here and change some of these different pieces. So again, this is kind of more of a quick, good to know kind of lesson, because we are going to be working with some of these different symbol types as we start moving deeper into the curriculum. There is, of course, one other type here that we did not talk about, which is the button. But I want to take time to dedicate almost its own lesson to the button, because there's a little bit more nuance when we're looking at buttons versus looking at graphics and motion clips. So we will look at buttons in the next video, and I will see you then.